All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And good evening, one and all, and welcome back to the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross this time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network and your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streamed around the world on classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send an email to me, my X-Zone email address is xzone@classic1220.ca. And the April edition of the X Chronicles newspaper is out at xchronicles.net. My guest this hour is our resident wizard, Grand Wizard himself. OBERON ZELL is his name, and we have the pleasure of talking to OBERON, well, quite frequently, because he's a very interesting guy. He's written some super books. And OBERON, what else can I say about you? Welcome back.
Hi, Rob. It's always glad to be here. Delighted to talk to you again.
So,
what can you say? Well, we'll talk about it for the next time here, our session.
Yeah. Since you and I last talked, there has been the total eclipse, solar eclipse. And how does the solar eclipse fit into the history's mysteries and how it affects what you and I both talk about many times?
Well, that's a good one. You know, I got a couple of interviews from different people regarding the eclipse as it was coming up. And I find it an interesting thing. If you really kind of step back a little and look at the whole planet as a vast single living organism, which is a major part of my fundamental thesis here, drawing a little line of shadow, the focused shadow of the moon across the face of the earth, you know, it's sort of like kind of doing laser surgery, you know, on a body or something. You've got this line being drawn in which there's an enormous focus of energy along that. And the nature of that has a lot to do with the spiritual energy that's associated with it. But this was an amazing time of coming together for people. It didn't matter for one little brief moment that extended across the entire continent of North America, from Mexico to Canada, as you know, was this line, and people were gathered along that line, regardless of age, religion, politics, race, gender, anything. It didn't matter. For one moment, along that particular pathway, everybody was united. And there was a sense of unity, a sense of what brings us together was bigger and greater than the things that keep us apart. And I saw that in articles and interviews and stuff in the newspaper. It all emphasized this moment of unity that we shared as we all stood in the shadow of the moon. But it wasn't in one spot alone. It passed across a path lasting all day long, from early morning until evening. This path moved across the face of the earth. And I think that was very profound, because eclipses have had all sorts of associated meanings, mostly doomsday meanings in the past, you know, eclipses and meteor showers. The word disaster means bad star, evil star. And so any astronomical weird things like comets or eclipses or meteor showers always had that kind of a scary connotation. And we had an eclipse and a comet in the sky at the same time, as well as all of the visible planets were all in the sky at the same time. It was an amazing conjunction. And it was a solar maximum. There were solar flares that you could see, especially where we were. There was a big solar flare that burst from the bottom edge of the disk of the moon as it covered the sun. It was just a remarkable experience, physically, astronomically, astrologically, and psychically. So, that was my hit on it. What was yours?
Well, mine was that I agree with you 100%, first of all. But I also like to think that the gathering of people in order to celebrate this once-in-a-lifetime event, as many are putting it, was a sign that we can get together, that there is hope for this planet. There is hope for humanity. And I believe that this was a sign given to each and every one of us to say, hey, guys, get it together like you are now, not just now, but every day of the year. And you know what? You're going to go places. That's how I saw it.
That's excellent. That's exactly right. That's exactly how I felt. I was with a bunch of druids up in northern Ohio at the time. I know that all the pagans that I know of were making every effort to get along the path of the eclipse, and so there were lots of gatherings of magical folks doing rituals and singing songs and making prayers and affirmations for that kind of stuff. Exactly.
Yeah.
For this to be a healing, a coming together, a visionary experience. It was powerful. I can't imagine anybody who did not stand in the shadow of the moon and look up at the sky at that moment and see what there was to see. It's like the eye of God, the images of the eye of God, like on the pyramid, on the back of the dollar bill and ancient Egyptian stuff. It's an image of an eclipsing sun. Yeah. That's what it is. So there's this alignment with the cosmos. You really feel that. So yeah, it was a great time.
Yeah, as you know, Niagara Falls was right on that line, and we had visitors from all over Canada, the United States, and it was so wonderful to see all the different people from all the different countries, all the different religions, all the different religious philosophies, men, women of every color, creed, uniting, and in my opinion, taking in the power that here we are on this little planet. We are so minute in this vastness, and yet, for what was it, 3 to 7 minutes, we were all united.
Exactly. Yeah. And think of the cosmic synchronicity that we happen to be on the only planet in the solar system, as far as we know, maybe the only one in the universe, who knows, in which the sizes of the moon and the sun, as seen from the Earth, are a perfect match. So an eclipse is possible like this. It would not be possible anywhere else. I mean, there are no moons on Venus, and Mars ones are just little tiny things. And by the time you get any further out, well, the sun is too small. So, this is it. This is the only place that we can experience a total eclipse of the sun. And, and we should recognize how blessed we are to have such a miracle available to us.
As a druid and as a pagan, what is the significance of a solar eclipse?
Well, I think the significance is the conjunction of these powerful forces that are normally not together. The masculine force of the sun and the feminine force of the moon, both of these associations are very widespread in most cultures. There's a few that have a slightly different perspective, of course. The Japanese have a sun goddess, Amaterasu, but for most people, there is that association of masculinity with the sun. In alchemy, the sun represents, gold and male and everything like that, and the moon is all the female stuff too. So bringing them together like this is a mating. It's a great cosmic mating. And so as in any kind of a mating, there's a sense of fertility, something that will emerge from this, a union of opposites that brings forth something new. And on a psychic level, it brings forth a new vision, a new inspiration, all of that kind of stuff. I think it's, that's kind of what I see about it. And that, I think, is the general pagan, magical, druidic perception of it all, because all of the magical people have the strong affinity with the moon and the sun. These are our cosmic forces that shape us and move us, and then we live by.
I was, my wife was saying to me after the eclipse, she said, Robbie, for that 7 minutes, I felt as if the spirit of Christmas was about us. The way that we think of humanity, the way that we look at people in different ways, the way we all want to make positive changes. And then after Christmas, it's gone until the next year. But I kind of said, you know what? You're so right. That was
Rob,
the feeling.
I can totally relate to that. Please convey this to your wife. As you know what I look like, all white bearded and stuff.
Yeah.
During most of the year, people who are total strangers that I meet in the grocery store and stuff will make some comment. Hey, are you Merlin or Dumbledore or Obi-Wan or whatever, Gandalf? I get those kind of things, which is fun, and that's not bad. But in December, it's all about Santa Claus.
Yep.
And so people will ask me, and little kids will ask me, are you Santa Claus, And I say yes, because for that moment, for that time of that month, the spirit of Santa Claus, a spirit of generosity and positivity and benevolence to children and everybody, goes forth into the world, and it animates many, many, many people, especially the people who actually take on the role of Santa Claus. And it's a whole consortium of bearded guys, who some work in malls and in stores, to be Santa Claus for a while for the kids. But it's not just acting; it's embodying this spirit. And I think that Santa Claus is. I believe in Santa Claus. I really do.
So do I. But wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just take that Christmas spirit, put it in a can, and whenever you're feeling down and out and you need that pickup in life, instead of turning to alcohol, instead of turning to anger, instead of turning to drugs, take out that can of Christmas spirit, open it up, and take a good whiff, and
I like that, Rob. I like that very much.
Oberon, please stand by. You and I have to take our first break. Exo Nation, our guest this hour is the one and only Oberon ZELL. His latest book, History Mysteries, is available at Amazon.com. It's a great book. And we'll both be back on the other side as we continue this edition of the X Zone with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And, wow, Christmas spirit in a can. I got to think about that one. We'll be back. Don't go away.
Earth changes. You're cracking me up. I'm starting to hear about all sorts of weird stuff. It's the bombs, it's the comets, it's the dark days upon us. Or so say the folks who all quote Nostradamus. Earth changes. Oh, prophets of doom. It sounds like disaster is your favorite tune. If it makes you feel better, get it out of your system and tell us about the next big cataclysm. Okay, the poles they will shift and volcanoes will bellow. LA's gonna disappear, New York turn to jello. There'll be tidal waves, earthquakes, fissures and cracks. The earth's gonna be screaming, you can all kiss my axis goodbye, bye. Earth changes. If it's like they said, then there's no use hiding out under your bed. But don't get depressed and run off to the bottle. The earth's trying to tell us it's Plus Crete will be nifty and house about peace. For a big polar shifty, a whole lot more love. And a big dose of patience, coming alive to the joys of creation. Earth changes, and so can we, for all of the changes are in you and me. With so much sweet love, is it really surprising? A new earth is dawning upon the horizon. Earth changes. Earth changes. Earth changes.
And welcome back, everyone. That was Michael Horn singing a song that he wrote called Earth Changes. And it's a very important song, in my opinion, because we have to take care of this planet. It's the only one we've got. And, you know, we know that we're killing it. This is why we all have to do our very best to try to work as a unit, like the people who went to see the eclipse. All of us get together and work to make this planet safe and to change what we've done to destroy it. You know, I know that the governments are trying their very best by getting rid of plastic bags, by bringing on electrical motor vehicles, and so on. Please, let's all work together. Let's make it a global project, which it has to be in order for it to work. My guest this hour is OBERON ZELL, and Exonation, we have a little celebration here, an announcement, because OBERON and Rihanna are going to be getting married on May the 17th of this year. So from everyone here in the Exonation, to you and Rihanna, the very best to you both, and in love, and I just hope the very best for you guys, because you're super people.
Oh, thank you so much, Ron. You know, and Rob, that song could not be more appropriate, I think, at this time. We're just a couple of days past Earth Day.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Which has been going on since, I remember the very first one in 1970. You know, we turned out, my group, the Church of All Worlds, we had a big turnout in the city park in St. Louis at that time. It was wonderful, big day, and it's been going on every year since on April 22nd. So, you know, and it was that year of 1970 that I had the life-changing vision that I had, the greatest, momentous epiphany ever of my life, really, that the entire planet, the entire biosphere of Earth is one single vast living organism.
I agree.
And I was the first one to write about that. And a few years later, that idea became famous by James Lovelock, a British atmospheric biochemist, who popularized the idea of the Gaia hypothesis, as he put it. But I call it a thesis, not a hypothesis. I think it's a position that we have to take. It's not, the Earth is not an it, it's a she.
That's right.
It's our mother, you know.
You know, and I look at, for example, the increase, the statistical increase in earthquakes because of the oil industry is like taking the very bloodline out of Mother Earth, or taking the fluid that protects our joints away from her. That's exactly it.
Yeah. It exactly is. Very good point. You know, and we just have to continue to increase that general awareness, because it's a challenge theologically for so many people who've been conditioned for so long with the Abrahamic monotheistic bias that you know, divinity is some masculine entity totally removed from our world and our life, you know, up there in the heavens somewhere, you know, and we need to get back down to earth.
Yes, we do.
You know, and recognize that we are a part of this vast organism. We are cells in the body of this vast organism. What we've called evolution is really the embryology of a global creature being that we are all a part of. And I think is that if we can increase that awareness and spread it, you know, it's one of the best things we can do. And hopefully we will see more and more of an emerging global response system. I see this already beginning with the younger generation, you know, as they're mobilizing for these various earth healing projects and stuff. It's sort of like the old, Peace Corps kind of a thing. We have a Gaia Corps emerging here,
I know a lot of people have no real concept on what is being done, and I there's a lot of people who badmouth the mainstream media, but when I look at channels like the Discovery channels, the National Geographic channels, where you open up and you just don't sit there, but sit there, open up your heart, your ears, and your eyes, and hear about the pollution. Look at the decrease in certain animals, for goodness sake. Look how the polar bears are just being forced out of their own kingdom, so to speak, just like any other animal, no matter where you are here in Canada, the United States, because they have to build more buildings, taking away more forestry, and it's a big problem. And I just don't understand people who walk around with their eyes shut. Maybe it's because they're paying too much attention to their iPhone, but I don't know. It really bothers me.
Well, on a scale of the 60-year cultural renaissance cycle that we are now in one of those in the 2020s, this one is being considered to be the awakening. And so we should be looking at this and taking people and kind of shaking them up and say, this is your wake-up call. Yeah. Wake up, everybody. Just wake up here, And it's as you mentioned, the polar bears. I was also thinking of the penguins. I mean,
yes.
As cute and adorable as they are, and as much as we love them, they're dying by the millions because the ice in Antarctica is breaking away and disappearing that they depend on for their living.
Just like the people who live up in northern Canada, they're having to move down south, and it's affecting their culture. It's affecting their traditions. It's affecting the way they live. It's just not us, It's everybody. So
it is. We're all a part of it. There is no separation. The great wisdom of the ages, to me, can be expressed in a phrase that was uttered in Latin by Cicero over 2,000 years ago, omnia vivunt, omnia inter se connexa, which means everything is alive and everything is interconnected. And that is the key thing. We all have to know that and remember it and keep it in our minds all the time. There is no separation of anything, and there is no, dead, inanimate, non-living part of our world, including us.
A lot of people on this show, as you well know, Oberon, talk about UFOs, extraterrestrials, aliens, alien abductions, cattle mutilation, and so on. I often wonder why an advanced race who has the ability to traverse time and space, wormholes, and every other unimaginable way and means of transportation, because we don't know everything, and anybody who on this planet who thinks we have all the answers, well, you've got a big thing to cope with. To me, the way that we've desecrated this planet would be a warning to anybody who has that ability that we are not ahead in our time. We are not technologically evolved. Why come here?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and the thing that I keep being puzzled about is we see so much indication that we are being visited. The question is from where? Because we're not seeing any signs out there in our best telescopes and our best observations going many thousands, in some case millions of light years out. We're not seeing any indication of alien life, civilizations, or anything. So where are these guys actually coming from? And I wonder myself, my own favorite hypothesis is that it's from our future, because the aliens that are described, especially the little gray guys, the most famous kind, they look like future evolved humans. They don't look like, insects or octopi or something that would chrome up on another planet. They look like our distant descendants who have maybe eventually discovered time travel and are coming back at this time to try to check out the situation, see what can be done, warn us. Who knows? Anyway, that's my crackpot theory on the subject.
I don't think it's crackpot. I really don't. Because when you look at the evolution of mankind from the Neanderthal up. You know, the chin is long and the brain is smaller, the head cranium is smaller. But as we evolve, or as we, no, wait a second, I've got it backwards. Let me just say this too, and I think you're right. I think you're right. I think that someone in the future has said, hey, we've got to get back there and fix it. But there again, if they're from our future, that means we actually survived.
It does. It gives us hope. It means that we've made it somehow, you know. And that I find very encouraging. The idea that we can look forward and say, well, somehow we managed to get through all this and come out the other side. And I hope we can learn from all this and make a difference. And I think that's probably what they're here for. That's the only thing that makes any sense to me. And could be wrong, you know, but at least it makes more sense than anything else I can think of.
We have to take our bottom of the hour break. Oberon, please stand by. Oberon Zell is our special guest. Exonation, OBERON.com is his website. And just to add on to what Oberon was saying, if you're in my philosophy is if you're not part of the problem. No, I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time today. I don't know why. If you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And who wants to be part of a problem anymore? We'll be back on the other side of this break as we continue with our show here. Don't go away.
Earth changes. You're cracking me up. I'm starting to hear about all sorts of weird stuff. It's the bounds.
What would it be, and would you call it to his face? If you were faced with him in all his glory, what would you ask if you had just one question? And yeah, God is great, yeah.
Welcome back to the X-Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. You're listening to us on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming at classic1220.ca. Oberon Zell is my special guest, and he's the author of a fascinating book, History's Mysteries, Turning Points That Changed Our World. It's available on Amazon.com, and here's just an idea why this book is so compelling. Here are some of the chapters. Aquatic Apes, let me see, Ice Age Civilizations, Lands Beneath the Waves, Enigma of the Sphinx, let me see, Sodom and Gomorrah, The Wrath of the Vulcan, Secrets of Crete, The Fall of Atlantis, Arthur and the Amazons, Crystal Ships, and so much more. Anybody who's interested in the weird, the strange, the paranormal, parapsychology, history, religious philosophies, this is a definite for your library. Once again, History's Mysteries, Turning Points That Changed Our World, available on Amazon.com. Speaking about religious philosophies, I have a question, and my wife was asking me, we talk and we have a coffee, and we don't even use our cell phones when we do this. Amazing, isn't it? She asked me, how many gods are there, Rob? Now, I was brought up a Christian. I said, well, there's only one God. And she says, well, if that's the case, why is the first of the 10 Commandments say, you shall have no other gods before me, if he is the only God? And I said, I don't know. So maybe you can help me with that answer.
Yes. Well, that's like saying, how many people are there? We can say there's one humanity, we're all part of humanity.
Right.
But there are many, many individuals and many cultures and many nations and many groupings within that. And I think that's the way it is with the gods. We can look beyond to the ultimate cosmic consciousness that is universal, something out there. The vast of consciousness that I think the entire universe is a great entity of consciousness myself. But then below that, we have the next layer, which is the realms of the gods. And I think that we get that mixed up because of the terminology. The use of the same word to imply some cosmic everythingness, as well as the individual personas that comprise the various pantheons of different cultures, is probably an unfortunate miscommunication, really. I think that the gods of different cultures and peoples, the Greek gods, Egyptian gods, can probably be seen more as the equivalent of angels in the Judeo-Christian mythos, that they are all what Terry Pratchett calls anthropomorphic personas, and that's what we've got out there. And these are genuine consciousnesses. They affect people. They've been a part of all these cultures since the dawn of time. They just don't have physical bodies, but we do. And that's where it comes down to it. And we link with this, our consciousness, which is not a physical thing. You can take apart a dead body down to the tiniest single atom and never find a single shred of consciousness in the entire thing. And yet there we are. But the same is true for our computers and our cell phones. We can take them apart too, and we'll never find the information that they comprise. And maybe what we are is we're devices like that can download consciousness and awareness from some greater source. And that's probably what it is too. We've got the afterlife realms that every culture has some kind of a place that people are go to upon death. There's not a single culture of people ever that we know of in the entire history, clear back to Neanderthals, that did not have a notion that upon death, somehow we continue going on somewhere else. And then below that level, we've got the dreaming, that place that we all visit every night, that is itself a realm. We've been watching recently the wonderful first season of Neil Gaiman's Sandman TV series, which I highly recommend. We've also been listening to it on audio books. And of course, back in the day, I was a devout reader of all the comic books and graphic novels. So Neil Gaiman's concept of all of this stuff is definitely wonderful. And then there's fairy, which is sort of next door to the dreaming, I guess. So we've got all these levels of consciousness and awareness that we participate in, because we also are conscious beings. And when you get the psychic phenomena involved in that, the ways we link with each other and other beings, it's a web of consciousness every bit as significant as the web of physical stuff that we see, the physical bodies, atoms and molecules and cells and organs and planets and stars and all the rest of that. That's also a cosmology. But there is the cosmology of the spirit as well. And that's where I think theology fits into all this. I think the error is in thinking that there is only one, because it's not only one. It's vastly complex. And we can say, yeah, sure, there's only one universe. That's what the word means. But within that, there is infinite complexity. And there's only one, source, one spirit realm, one spirit, perhaps. We can say that too on the same level. But within that is infinite complexity. So there's my theological statement.
When I was a young lad and I went into science and we started talking about the solar system, and, I looked at it because I used to love reading myself. My parents would get me a subscription to National Geographic every year.
Oh, yeah.
And there was an article about atoms and molecules. And I looked at that diagram of a molecule going around an atom, and then they'd add another molecule, and it would change whatever it was. And I was saying, that looks like our solar system.
Doesn't it, though?
So, to me, when you're looking at an atom, and you're looking at the neutrons, photons, nucleus, and electrons, and how they react, and they make us who we are. We're part, you know, that we have atoms, molecules in us. And if in fact we look at the solar system that we're in, the sun being the atom and the planets being the molecules, or the neutrons, look what we're part of.
Well, you know, I think the whole cosmos can be seen as kind of one of those Russian Matryoshka dolls, you know.
One on top of each other, one inside, one inside, one inside.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And, you know, and within the atoms, you know, within the nucleus of the atoms, we've now discovered that there are subatomic particles, and that goes on down. And it just keeps on going down and down, and then it goes up and up and up, and we're somewhere in the middle. You know, we actually perceive ourselves as being right smack in the middle between the smallest atom and the great universe. But that's just a place of perception. That's because this is where we are. And we look around, and of course we're in the middle. But I think that concept, that realization, is something that everyone has shared. You know, it's one of those campfire things, sitting around the campfire saying, well, maybe these little atoms are little miniature solar systems, and there's little tiny people living on the electrons going around the nucleus and stuff like that. And I think that's a great insight. It's a vision that links us. We are part of a continuity, of a continuum from all of space, from the smallest to the greatest, from all of time, from the beginning to the ending, as it were, if there is any such. And I'm not entirely sure there is really a beginning or an ending, but we imagine that there is, because it's hard to imagine anything else. But, you know, it's very exciting to be in a time and a place where we can have instruments that can look into these kind of things. We didn't used to have that, you know. We had no idea. 100 years ago, there was no concept of galaxies and distant stars and planets and stuff. There was no way of knowing that. You know, the telescope was invented by Galileo, really used, and it was in 1620 that he first looked at Jupiter and saw that it had 4 moons, which is why we call them the Galilean moons. Now, of course, we know there's hundreds of them out there because we've gone out and checked them out. But there was no concept of anything beyond that we were part of a galaxy, and that the galaxies are scattered throughout the cosmos like grains of sand on an infinite beach. You know, and then the same thing down. We didn't have microscopes. There was no way in the old days, or not that long ago, of having any idea of what the cosmos was like and what our place was in it and where we fit. And we probably still will have much to discover, because according to the latest thinking in astrophysics, something like 85% of the universe is unknown, what they call dark matter and dark energy, which just simply means we have absolutely no idea, but there's something there that we can't detect except by gravity. Somehow it's not accounted for. We don't know. Where is it? What is it? You know, and if that's 85% of the universe is something that we cannot pin down or see or detect, we don't really know that much.
I think humans give themselves way too much credit.
Yeah.
You know, and I hear the old, you know, well, Einstein says matter cannot be, you know, changed or destroyed, or I'm sorry, can only be changed, can't be destroyed. And I'm saying to myself, well, is it possible that the people that we consider to be so smart are going to have a longevity until somebody else comes around with another explanation?
You know, I just read a thing like that says that that knowledge and science progresses by funerals. You know, you have to have one generation has to die off and a new one come in before new ideas can firmly become rooted, because people get very wedded in their own paradigms, you know. But they're constantly changing, constantly shifting, and I think it's very exciting to be a part of that. You know, I made my own little contributions myself to the whole idea. So, you know, there we go.
All right, there we go. We've got to go for our final break. Speaking about, there we go. Exonation Oberon ZELL is our special guest. His latest book, History's Mysteries: Turning Points That Changed Our World, is available on Amazon.com, and visit his website, OBERONZELL.com. The X Zone is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. And we're here Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. until midnight. We're from, well, our place in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, streaming at classic1220.ca.
If God had a name, what would it be, and would you call it to his face?
Yeah, yeah. Crying on my pillow, lonely in my bed. Then I heard a voice beside me, and she softly said, "Wonder is your nightlight, magic is your dream." And as I held her, she said, "See what I mean?" I said, "What?" She said, "Ooh, ooh, ooh-wee." I said, "All right." She said, love me, undercover angel, midnight fantasy."
Welcome back. OBERON ZELL is our special guest. OBERONZELL.com is his website, and the name of his latest book is History's Mysteries, Turning Points That Changed Our World, and it's available on Amazon.com. First of all, OBERON, thanks very much for joining us tonight, and once again, congratulations on your upcoming nuptials on May 17th.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. I'm very much looking forward to it. After I was married for 40 years to the most amazing woman, Morning Glory, and she eventually died of cancer, sadly, and that was 10 years ago. And in the last 10 years, I've been on walkabout, been all over the Western Hemisphere, checked out being in lots of different places, and I finally found myself a new place to settle down in northwestern North Carolina, near Asheville, and an amazing, incredible, wonderful woman to settle down with, Rhiannon. And we're very excited. We met, connected just a year ago and fell in love, and now we are looking forward to getting actually married, which is wonderful for both of us.
That is so wonderful, and my congratulations to you, and please extend them to your future bride.
I will do that. Thank you.
You and I were chatting during the break that there are some questions that people still don't understand or know, and I have two that I'd like to ask you about because I get asked these quite a bit. Whatever happened to the discovering what the missing link was?
Well, there were lots of links. It's a chain, The reference, of course, being to humans, human evolution, where we came from and all that stuff. And the very first fossils of humans that were discovered, or hominids or proto-humans, were widely separated in time and space. So the whole idea is try to connect them up. And we've done a lot of that now. There really isn't so much a missing link anymore, or missing links. We've plugged in all kinds of stuff. We've made amazing discoveries of the continuity. And one of the most profound, I think, is the discovery that we all have a little bit of Neanderthal DNA. So somewhere in our ancient history, like 200,000 years ago maybe, our ancestors and the Neanderthal people interbred a little bit. And so that I think it's a continuum. It just goes on back and back and back, one generation after another, and we'll always be discovering new missing links, new little links in the chain. But it's a chain. It's not just there's not just one hole in the chain. It's a continuum.
Many years ago, Lloyd Pye, who has passed now, came on the show about 30 years ago. And he was telling me that he believes that, or he had done research into the possibility that a creature like Sasquatch actually resided in Siberia. And the miners would use these animals or these creatures or these, however we want to describe them, in the mines and working in the fields and doing all this heavy labor that they could do because of their strength. And they were also used as sex slaves.
Huh.
Now, according to Lloyd, part of the Russian kings, queens, royalty could actually be traced back to these Bigfoot-like creatures.
Well, that's something I've never heard of before, but I do know that Neanderthal people lived in the northern areas. There's a vast, the largest biome on the planet is the taiga, the northern forest, which is mostly northern Canada and Siberia, Scandinavia, Alaska, all that circles the pole. The great forest that circles it, and it's virtually uninhabited by people. It's huge area, vast amount of area, many hundreds of thousands of square miles. And there have been a lot of reports from those areas, Sasquatch reports. There have been reports of living mammoths that people claim to have seen up there. I don't know, can't verify any of these, but if there was any place on the planet remote enough to sustain a population of such beings, it would certainly be the area where they are in fact reported from. There's some of the books and writings have kind of confused Neanderthals and Sasquatch, and maybe said that, well, reports of Sasquatch are actually reports of surviving Neanderthals and stuff. And maybe so. Maybe some of our mythos about ogres and trolls and such, come from these. But I think that the Sasquatch, as I understand it, the most likely candidate is a proto-hominid relative called Paranthropus, that was in fact in ancient times about much bigger than our direct ancestors, and a vegetarian with heavy jaws and powerful limbs and huge hips. And the reconstruction of Paranthropus from the considerable amount of fossils that we have looks to me exactly like our best images of Sasquatch. So I think that if there's any place that they could have survived and continue living, it would in fact be in the very places they're reported from. So I think that they are still one of the most likely of the cryptozoological legendary beings that are still out there. Them and the Loch Ness Monster, maybe, sea serpents. Kraken, we already got the Kraken. We're down with those.
Sure. In fact, there was a recent sighting of a Loch Ness Monster type creature in Canada's Lake Ogopogo.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Pogo, they call her. Yeah.
And that was front page news in the British tabloids because the two people who took the photo were they were on holiday here in Canada, in British Columbia, when they saw this creature. Anyway, I still can't understand why people think that we have all the answers to everything. We can't. It's impossible. And this is why we need to discuss these things. That's why we have to be open about it. That's why we need to open our ears, open our eyes, and open our heart. For example, how many people, we did a survey on this. The question was, where did the bird originate from? Was it from a mammal? Was it from a sea creature? Or was it brought to Earth by outer space carriers? Well, the majority was outer space. Then it went to sea creatures. But nobody got the real answer, which is the dinosaurs, because they can't conceive that this little bird that flies around in our backyards and in our skies were actually dinosaurs, originated from dinosaurs.
Well, consider this, Rob.
Okay.
Imagine that some great catastrophe could happen, like what happened 65 million years ago. A big mountain falls out of the sky and wipes out almost all life on Earth.
Yep.
And among all the mammals, the only survivors are bats. Now, in 60 million years in the future, some future, cockroach entities or whatever, are unearthing the remains of whales and elephants and giraffes and humans. Would they ever imagine that these, in fact, could be related to bats? because those would be the only mammals they've got,
Yeah.
Bats are mammals, but they share apparently nothing in common with whales or elephants or
That's true.
any of the rest of it. And then we're stuck in that same situation. There were these great monsters, these dragons that dominated the earth. Dragons ruled the earth for 170 million years. I mean, we can't conceive of that. We're not like even a quarter of a million years of our entire history. And here, this is staggering amount of time, 70 times the entire span of our existence. So it's not too surprising that when we first started discovering these guys and digging them up, we didn't know what they were. They were called terrible lizards because we thought they were reptiles.
Mm-hmm.
Then eventually we figured out, well, they weren't really reptiles because they were apparently warm-blooded. And then we discovered that many of them apparently were covered with feathers, because we started finding really good fossils with feathers. It took a long time before we were able to come to the bird connection. But interestingly enough, the first dinosaur footprints that were discovered in Texas were thought to be the footprints of giant birds, giant prehistoric birds, because that's what they look like.
Wow.
And that was the first and biggest clue, actually, the feet. So, we're always learning new stuff. Remember that old TV series, called Kung Fu?
Oh, yeah, sure, with David Cassidy.
David Carradine.
Carradine, yeah.
Yes. Well, one of my favorite episodes of that, the best line that came from it, is that someplace at the end of the show, somebody asks the Chinese Kung Fu master, "What's the answer?" And he says, and I love this, he says, "I don't know the answers. I'm still trying to understand the questions." And I kind of think that's where we're at, still trying to understand the questions.
Well, Bron, I've got about a minute left. Give our listeners your website, how to get your books, and how they can go to the School of Wizards, the Grey School of Wizards.
Oh, yes, of course. Well, please. It's greyschool.com, GREYSCHOOL, greyschool.com. I have a school of wizardry that is the best in the world. It's 20 years old as of now, and I'm very, very proud of it. We have over 500 classes in 16 different departments and an international student body and incredible teachers. Wow. And check it out. You just go there. You can just check it out. Go look down the catalog of courses available. Greyschool.com.
And of course, people can get your latest book, Histories, Mysteries, Turning Points That Changed Our World, at Amazon.com. As always, Oberon, whenever I talk to you, my friend, time goes by so fast. Once again, congratulations to you and the missus. And I look forward to the very next time in the very near future when you and I meet back here in the X Zone. So until then, take care and congratulations one more time.
Thanks. Always a pleasure, Rob. Look forward to next time.
All right, X Zone Nation, I'll be back on the other side of this very short break as the X Zone will continue with yours truly, Rob McConnell. To find out more about the X Zone, visit www.xzoneradio on classic1220.ca or our main site, xzoneradiotv.com. And for all the programming that we have available for you on the X Zone Broadcast Network, 100% with our compliments, www.xzbn.net. But right now, we're coming to you on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, and streaming around the world on classic1220.ca.
I said, what?